Welcome to Mindset Lessons on the Field. I'm your host, Gina Kazaza. Before we get started, quick invite to join our free Substack community. We got monthly book club. We got articles to boost your mental fitness and resilience. We got a group chat going on because growth is easier when you're not doing it alone. So come on over and join that Substack community. Also, if this show hits home, please leave a rating, share it, follow us on Instagram, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Now, one more thing before we dive in. Quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Empowered Lit Literacy and Beyond. It's a 501c3 nonprofit bringing author visits and confident building programs to kids. Right now, only 30% of kids are reading at grade level. Gosh, that's a scary number. And confidence drops at the age of 7. Empowered Lit is changing that, but it takes partners like you. Literacy is the entry point. Confidence is the outcome. Learn how to support them in the show notes. Today's guest knows pressure at a level most people never will. She served as a jump master in the United States Air Force, training others to trust themselves in high-stakes moments. Now she brings that same mindset into the civilian world, using indoor skydiving to help leaders perform under pressure. This is about stepping into the unknown and not backing down. I am really excited to introduce you guys to Tanya Chavez. Tanya, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Gina. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh. First of all, we 106 episodes the other day. So you're like 109, I want to say, but like only 3 females have been on my show, or 4 females. So this is like, and I think you're our first jump master. So this is definitely one for the books, which I'm really, really excited about. I have to ask from the beginning though, like, did you know you were going to go into the military? Why Air Force? Did you know you were going to like be a jump master? Were you interested in jumping out of planes? Like, talk to us. Give us this background. I'm intrigued.
Yes. No, I had no idea I was going to jump out of airplanes. I was actually a very shy and reserved kid, but I didn't want to be. And I remember there was a guy who came from West Point. He was on the cross country team with me. He was in the band with me, and he came to speak to us. And he was explaining what this experience was like. And even though I grew up in the military, I grew up on an army base in Seoul, Korea. My dad was in the Navy, spent 20 years there. I still didn't really have an interest or really understand what it all entailed. But when this guy came and told me all these crazy things that he got to do, I thought, what better way to break me of this shyness, to step into my own courage than to be almost forced to be honest. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what got me into applying for military academies when I was in high school. And I ended up getting into Air Force. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I felt like skydiving was a lot safer than stepping into a leadership position. So that is the real reason why I joined the skydiving team.
So, because we're going to be talking about leadership, what, I guess, maybe it was misconceptions, but was it like, or that scare, like that made you, I guess, in a way scared or not want to do leadership? Or what was going on in terms of what did you think leadership was as opposed to what you know leadership is?
Yeah. So when I was at the academy, everywhere you look, it screams leadership. That's all you're doing day in, day out. You're training, you're practicing. And the story that I would tell myself was, I will save leadership for when I graduate, for when I have to do it. But the reality was I was terrified. So stepping into a leadership role, you're opening yourself up for critique. Everybody's watching what you're doing. It just felt super vulnerable. It felt super raw. Whereas skydiving, I could hide behind. It was considered it's like a very elite team to be a part of. And so it's easy to say, no, I don't want to try and be a squadron commander. I'll pass on group staff because no one's going to question you because you're still doing something incredibly scary. I don't know. It's just like really an easy way for me to hide and not be truthful to myself, to be honest. But what I didn't expect is that was going to be the biggest leadership laboratory I could have ever asked for and quite literally change the trajectory of my life.
Okay, so now we have to go deep into this part of it. So you decide to go this route. Have you ever jumped out of a plane before?
No, I'm actually kind of terrified of heights. I just couldn't believe I actually did it. Like, it was shocking to me what I realized I could do when I pushed through some of these boundaries.
Okay, so here's my question. So, I mean, there were fears on both. It was like, what's the lesser of the two evils, essentially? right?
Yes.
For you.
And still also like keeping my reputation intact, right? Like I don't want to be like, I'm this scaredy cat that's going to sit in the corner and try to skate by.
Right. Yeah. You wanted to go. Okay, let's talk because you're the first jump master on the show, I believe. I'm 90% sure you're the only jump master on the show. So nobody revealed that. And it's an elite position. So I'm sure they would have said it. Okay. So for you, talk to us about that process and what that actually entails. And then I have questions from what you just said before.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Air Force Academy is a little bit unique in the way they do their training. So most people, when they think of earning their military jump wings, it's doing their 5 static line jumps, meaning they hook up. There's that, the Jody that people would sing, stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door, and you jump, you step out and your parachute opens, right? For us, we do 5 free falls. So your first skydive is 100% solo. It's the only place in the world that does that, and you're pulling your own parachute. And we do this after only 3 days of ground training. So we have to instill a lot of procedures, a lot of trust into the cadets so that they're able to actually step out of that plane on day 4. And so what makes it, that training was, and I thought this was, looking back, I think it's crazy because, you're like 17, 18 years old when you first jump out of the airplane and you earn your wings. But then you find out, now I'm eligible to apply for the team. So you go through this really rigorous tryout process. It's very physical. Then you have to go through the interview process and you go through a year on what they call wings of green before you get to graduate onto wings of blue. And so there you're learning how to skydive yourself. You're learning how to free fall. You go through accelerated free fall training. And then you spend the second half of the year learning how to be a jump master. So by the time you're 19, 20 years old, you're literally in charge of the entire airplane. You tell the pilots where to fly. You decide when to open the door. And then you decide when to tell someone to stand in the door. And you're quite literally physically holding them out until you tell them to go.
Wow. That's leadership right there. I mean, wow. So talk to us though, because I can't not ask this question. First time jumping out of plane, explain this to me because you're scared of heights. So what is going on through your mind? Were you about to throw up? Talk to us about this whole experience.
So ironically, the one time I did feel like I was going to throw up was the first time I was a jump master because that felt more scary than jumping out of an airplane. But if I go all the way back to the first time I jumped myself, I remember really hoping I was the first one on the airplane. So that way I could just not think about it and go. But of course I was in the middle. And so I'm just watching these people fall away from the airplane. And I'm my heart is racing. I can feel my palms sweaty. And all I could think is, there is no way my brain will let go of the plane. I mean, I could have done all the training in the world. I could be excited for it. I could want to do it. But how do you really override this very real fight or flight response? Because nobody wants, your body does not want to jump out of this airplane.
I'm so glad you're about to talk about this because I need to know how the heck do you override the fight or flight? And yeah, because you're right with the body, 100%. Keep going. No,
yes,
I'm in it.
Yes.
I'm in it.
Yeah. So here I am. I finally get up and there's this whole sequence the jump master goes through. So they check your gear. They tell you to lean forward, check the back, sit up. So there's a whole process before you even stand. And then they ask you, are you ready to jump? And you yell free fall. And then once it's time, the jump master's looking out the door and they put 2 fingers in your face and they're like, stand in the door. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going. So then I remember going right hand, right foot, left hand, left foot, check in. And they will take their hand and physically push your hips out of the door. So as much of your body is in the airstream as possible. And so then you check in and they tell you to go and you look at your prop or look forward and you go prop up, down, and then you let go of the plane. And so usually when you think of skydiving, you just jump. You just bypass all that discomfort and be like, I'm just going to jump out the door and just enjoy the skydive. We make you sit in the discomfort. Stand in the door is a very common phrase that we use. We have it painted on our gear up area because it's really about, can you stand in that fear and move forward anyway? And so for me, that's when my trust and my training kicked in. I remember falling, watching the jump master waving at me, and I lost count. You're supposed to count before you pull. And I was I just couldn't believe I did it. I just was oh my God, I jumped out of the plane. I jumped out of the plane. I jumped out of the plane. So then I ended up pulling my parachute and enjoying the ride down. But it was one of those things where you realize once you get through that incredibly stuck threshold, how much fun there can be on the other side.
So love that. I put myself in crazy positions, and people know from listening to the show. I mean, I paid to get kidnapped. I went free,
swimming with sharks, no cage. And, I put myself into, I used to have a really big fear of snakes, and I would like take myself to Petco to hold the snakes, and then eventually was able to like just pick one up out of the cage. And, I like to put myself in uncomfortable. I used to be a comic and things like that and you stand up. But like sometimes the thing is you do it, right? But the thing I'm always trying to figure out is like how to get the body to just relax. Like what the heck? And there are just so many times like at a speech, I'm a speaker. Like a month ago, I was keynoting at this conference and I've done my, you're a speaker, like you have your theme, what you've talked about a bunch of times, but then you cater it around to the people you're speaking to, right? And I had like 6 speaking events leading up to this and forgot. Like I just was like, oh my God, I forgot I have my other keynote this week. I have to write the speech as I am walking up. Like I just have to as I'm driving up. And I was like messing up. And I'm like, just go to bed at this point. Just go to bed. And I'm like, in the morning, you're either going to get it or you're not going to get it. You've done this 1,000 times. You got it. Right. But my stomach was still like about to throw up. And it's because I was unprepared, really, not like I get nervous. My hands started to shake and I'm just telling my body like, hey, it's going to be fine. It's going to be cool. We're fine. None of that helps. Like it just, my body's still trembling. And I'm just curious for you. Like, I know if I'm on a plane looking down or out and seeing all that, like my body is going to, uncontrollably. So I need to know for you, like, what is it? Like, is there a way that you can like get it? Cause when you say calm down, it doesn't help. Like, breathing
it usually does the opposite.
Yeah. Breathing exercises for some reason just like makes me breathe heavier. I don't know why. I don't know if I do them right, but I'm just curious, like talk to me about this part.
Yeah. So much of it is about the practice. And you kind of mentioned how you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you put yourself in these, you start to recognize when you're uncomfortable and you start using that discomfort as data so you can start to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Like you said, breathing might not work for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing the military does really well is all these cadets that are going through, we put hundreds of cadets through a year. We all get our jump wings and 99.9% of them will never jump into combat. But that's not the point. The point is to practice overriding this fear or understanding how you respond in this discomfort, which is why it applied so well in leadership. And I think the mistake we make a lot is thinking that it's only the big things that will push us into discomfort.
Yes. Talk to me about that.
Yes.
Go further on that.
Yes. So there are so many opportunities to practice standing in the door if you start to recognize them. So for example, this morning, I took my kids to school. My 4-year-old always struggles getting out the door. Like they pull up, the helper opens the door and he just doesn't want to get out or he takes his sweet time. And they're like, come on, hurry up. We have cars behind us. And all that pressure is making it worse for him, right? And some of the helpers are great. They're able to hold the container for him, help him walk out. Like they still are able to get him to move while remaining calm. There's others, which happened today, where this woman was like, he needs to get out now. She's always waiting. She's always holding up the line. And I'm feeling like triggered. Because not only do I want my kid to get out, but I'm like, it's so easy to start being like, oh, she's not patient enough. She is like rushing my kid. She's not helping him overcome his fear of getting out of the car or whatever it is that's keeping him in. And I have to recognize I'm uncomfortable because I'm the one who doesn't like to be a burden. You have to sit like with your own insecurities and your own discomfort and actually let that move through your body and practice doing that regardless of what the trigger is. It could seem so menial, but it doesn't matter. Your body still is in fight or flight. It still feels like it's jumping out of an airplane.
Self-awareness comes to my mind as you say that. Because like you have to be aware of your insecurities. You have to be aware of who you are as a person. Like you just told me, I don't want to be a burden, right? That's just who I am, right? But you need to know that about you in order to be able to sit and understand that feeling. What are some things that we as listeners can do to understand ourselves better and be more self-aware?
So a big piece of that, like I mentioned, is when you recognize that you're uncomfortable, is to not run away from it. Treat it as like, okay, I am in this uncomfortable state. How do I know that? Is it my heart is racing? I had one person, when we went indoor skydiving, told me, she's like, oh, my mouth gets dry. And so that was her trigger. So starting to understand what those even are for you. So you know to recognize, to slow down enough to actually let that move through your body and recognize how you get through that. So there's those in the moment, I need to get through that. Like I tried breathing and it didn't work. I end up hyperventilating. But I noticed that if I step outside and I get some fresh air, that works for me. So let me put that into my practice. And I think the other key is once you recognize what works for you is to actually put that into practice when things are calm. So it's accessible for you when things are not calm.
That is a excellent point, right? We don't just practice when it is the worst. You have to practice on those good days too, right? Did you overcome, or which fears did you have that you realized aren't such a big deal, or maybe you thought that they were as bad as you thought? Talk to us about that, because now you're stepping into leadership.
I think it really came together for me my senior year. So my junior year, I was already being a jump master, but I felt still kind of scared. Little by little, things were starting to shake off, but it wasn't until my senior year.
Can you talk to us about those fears? What were they exactly?
So the first one was just whether or not people would respect me. I remember that I mentioned the one time I did feel like I was going to throw up. I was getting ready to be a jump master for my very first real group of students. And I remember being in the bathroom and I was just pacing. And there came a point where I was like, I have to step through this door. There's no more time. So I took a deep breath. I got through the door and then I stand in front of the gear up area and I look through the little rectangle window and I see the students lined up and they are terrified. Their face is pale. It's their first jump. So they haven't, it's not fun for them yet. They're just scared. And so they're wringing their hands. They look terrified. Nobody is talking. It made me realize they're all bigger than me, right? It's a group of senior guys that are going to go on to be fighter pilots, whatever. And I'm like, I have to physically hold them out the door. Will they trust me to hold them out the door? Will they listen to me? And I was so focused on how I was going to show up that when I realized that they were the ones that needed support, it's not about me and my, am I going to come off as a badass or not? It's, I need to be there for them. And so I remember taking a deep breath and swinging the door open and starting my jump master brief, letting the training kick in again. And as I started to notice them and try to focus on what they needed, it became a lot easier to meet them where they're at. And my nerves started to flush away. Extrapolate that out into leadership. Even when I got into corporate after the Air Force, I remember really wanting to build a high performing team. Because after being on Wings of Blue, then I went on to be an intelligence officer for F-15s. And then I went on to be an intelligence officer for unmanned aircraft. And they were very high performing. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun to be part of these teams. And so I wanted to create that in corporate and I didn't know how, because I'm like, we're not going through basic training together. We're not deploying together. We don't have those shared experiences that almost force trust and understanding and respect. And I realized a lot of people are just scared. They're scared. They're stuck in their own routines. So I was like, if I could understand each person's skydive and meet them where they're at and help them push through that, they're going to see themselves in a stronger light. We're going to get the most out of them. They're going to build their capacity, step into their potential. And then it's just so much more fun because now everyone's coming alive and it creates this really sense of camaraderie and belonging that really helps teams thrive. And so, like I said, they might not be jumping out of airplanes, but understanding what that is for them and creating the conditions for them to take their own jumps was huge for me moving into leadership positions.
Wow, you said so many amazing things. The first thing I really want to touch base on for our listeners is it's not about me, right?
Yes.
It's about them, right? I've talked about this a couple of times on the show. Actually, I didn't say this story, but I speak to kids a lot. Do a lot of kid speakings. And this one girl asked the whole group. She asked me, but it was in front of 300 students. What if you get social anxiety? She was like, what if you get, I said, if you get social anxiety, you're too much in your head. Make it about them. And I go, if you're uncomfortable, you have to look at the person you talk to and say, how can I make them comfortable? And the whole entire time you're in your mind, that's what you're going to be saying. You're going to smile at them. You're going to shake their hand. You're going to look them in the eye. You're going to, and the whole entire time, all you're going to tell yourself is make them comfortable. Right. And suddenly your social anxiety is going to go away because it's not about you. You're too much in your head. And she's like, oh, I never thought about that. Right. And that's exactly what you did. It was like, it's hard not to think about ourselves when our body is screaming, like, and you're feeling it, right? Nobody understands. They don't see it. To you, you might look, to those guys, those students that were there looking at you, you might have looked calm, ready to go. They didn't know that you were pacing in the bathroom, right? Like they didn't know, right? But so you had to hide it well, right? We don't know the other person's anxieties, right? And also too, it's like you don't feel them. You don't know them. We can hide them well, right? But that's why I always tell people, like, make it about the other person. How can you help this audience? How can you help this focus on one thing, one person, and that'll help you. And that was like, whoa, that was fantastic. And then you went into corporate. And I really like this because not even just corporate, but it just any job in America that's not in the military, right? How do you build a team that is thick as thieves? How do you build a team that will die for you? And it's just like, well, you go through hard things together, right? It's like if you want your team to connect and do so, like team building, right, is a big thing because it's like if you want your team to get to know each other, right, you just put them through uncomfortable situations, like go do something together. Military is very good at that. It's very good at making you guys come together as a group, right? So I know, like, and you said the word belonging, which is my number one word. Wrote a book, You Really Truly Do Belong. It's my thing. And so I want to know for you, like, how do you do it in terms of, it's not like you're grabbing everybody and being like, let's go camping for the weekend and do team building and stuff. Or maybe you are, I don't know. But how do you do in corporate America, like get groups? And for those that are listening that run businesses, those that are in the that have a 9-to-5 office job, like what advice do you have in terms of building that camaraderie, that belonging within the work, the 9-to-5s, I guess?
Yeah. So I was on this search for a while and I fell into when I went to get my MBA at UC Berkeley, and I thought I'm going to learn about finance because I don't really understand that. I was in the military. Like that's just not what we did. But I ended up falling into this leadership communications, high performing leadership's world because I wanted to know, they had this way of, and I teach there now, they had this way of creating this sort of deep camaraderie, which we thought we already had in just one day. Like we had this one class where it was a core part of our core curriculum and it was leadership communications, and it was two full days. And after that first day, people felt like they just knew each other. And so much of it is one, showing up as yourself, which is hard to do. I think so many people don't even realize how much they've kind of went away from that. And the higher you go in leadership, the more you hide and you don't even realize it, right? Like, so when you're an individual contributor, the thing that might have gotten you promoted was taking risks. But then because you take risks, they pay off. They see that you can step into bigger roles. But then you get into leadership. And just like I did at the academy, you start to hide. You feel like you have to be perfect. What you don't realize is when you share your mistakes or you share these stories and you start to like be a real person, that is how people are going to not just connect to you, but they're going to start to feel like they can take risks too. And a lot of us forget to do that, or we hide behind it. We're playing into this mold. So you have to be very intentional about how you interact with your team. And you have to walk the walk, right? You can't just say you guys need to take risks and then you never do.
Right. Yeah.
So storytelling is huge, right? And so it's like you're creating these connections with people and understanding them in ways that you can do through stories, through conversations, and through the way that you set up the conditions that you put into place for your team. And so I'll throw this out there and then maybe we can do a choose your own adventure. I talk about you have to have these jump conditions in place if you want people to take their jumps. And you can't force them to, right? Like at the end of the day, they have to take their jump. But for yourself and for your team, how do you have fun? Because the joy is in the journey. So you have to bake that and you have to be intentional about that. And it's easy to let that slide. How do you find calm in uncertainty? Because calm leads to clarity. Then how do you make more mistakes? Because mistakes lead to mastery. And so embracing mistakes, sharing your mistakes, recognizing that those are the stories that are going to inspire others instead of thinking they're going to make you look bad. And then the P stands for people. So find your people because camaraderie creates courage. And for me, that was like a huge, huge piece of my life is when I notice how much I shut down when I'm around the wrong people and how much I open up when I'm around the right people.
Wow.
I shouldn't say the right people, when there's trust amongst the people.
Yes. So okay. I like you said that. So how does one gain trust amongst people?
So much of it is we're not intentional about one, sharing ourselves or leaving enough space for them to share. Once you get into a leadership position, especially when you start like moving into leadership, again, you get into these I statements, right? You're like, am I going to be a good manager? Am I inspiring? What am I doing? Instead of, let me just ask some questions. Let me coach this person in front of me and hear what they really have to say and help them think through the challenging situations instead of I just give the solutions. Because we're trying so hard to be valuable because that's what made us valuable as individual contributors, right?
Right.
So giving people that space for themselves, then also for you, making it a point to be transparent with your team and starting to recognize, I particularly think about this with mistakes in fighter pilot squad or in squadrons, especially in the fighter pilot world. If you're not calling yourself out or each other out, regardless of rank, you're in the wrong. Like you're the weirdo. So if you can start calling yourself out and creating that normalcy, it's going to create these bonds amongst each other where you're like, wow, I really can make mistakes because that's only going to lead me into mastery. That's only going to make me better. But it starts with you and it's hard to do that.
100%. Yeah. But now my question to that though is how does one get comfortable with hearing the critique? Like if someone's calling you out, right? That can sometimes put someone on a defense. Someone calls you out, automatically defenses can come up, right? How does one get comfortable with accepting that critique or that call out?
My go-to is questions. So when that's really hard for me because I've always felt like I have to be perfect or I have to be better in order to be just mediocre or like accepted. Mm-hmm. And so whenever people would call me out, I thought, oh my gosh, they think I don't belong. They don't, it feels like when I would sit in performance reviews, I would get the stand in the door feeling. And so I remember before performance reviews, I talked about having a practice, right? Sometimes you know what your triggers are. So it's like, well, what am I doing beforehand? Like when you think about an athlete, and before a game, what are their pregame rituals? What is your pregame ritual? So I remember like going for a walk in the parking lot before I would have to go sit in, just do what I can to be regulated. Like, how do I regulate my nervous system so I can see more clearly? Then once I'm in, the key is how do you create space? So like, let's say somebody gives you a critique, you have to create space before you respond. Otherwise, you're just going to be defensive. You're just reacting and it gets you nowhere. And so again, for some people it might be deep breaths, but sometimes it's not. Like for me, I used to use visuals a lot and touch. So I remember sitting across from my boss and like really zooming into the details of his shirt. Like he would say something to me and before I respond, I'm going to force myself to look at his shirt, notice the pattern. I remember like feeling the chair I was sitting on and just getting like really zoned in on like one or two of my senses so I can get back into my body. So it's like I recognize I'm out of my body. So now how do I get back in? And then I would ask a question. And like, let's say he told me, I feel like you're not in the office as much as you should be. I'm like, okay, well, what example can you give me that shows that this is a problem? Or like, can you ask a question to help them explain and enter a conversation? So you got to be regulated when you walk in, create space, and then ask a question. And then it starts to become about the problem instead of about you.
When you say create space, would you say like the pause would be similar to that?
Yes. And recognizing you're going to be uncomfortable. Just like I mentioned at the very beginning, like I'm standing in that door, I'm going to feel the discomfort. So just be okay with that and let it go through your body, right?
Yeah.
And then you slowly start to bring it back down.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. I like that too. Because it's like sometimes the body and the mind, they're not working together, right? And the circuit boards, they can be a bit of a mess,
Totally. And I have to remind myself sometimes too, like I had a great boss. Like, I mean, maybe sometimes not everybody has that, right? But in this scenario, I knew that. So I'd have to remind myself that I am safe in this scenario and that he's trying to help me improve. So let's have a real conversation instead of just getting defensive and proving that I'm perfect.
All right. I like that. I like that a lot. What do you think, speaking of like facing fears, like and stuff, what do you think people get wrong about courage?
I think one of the biggest things that people misunderstand about courage is that it is a solo sport, that it's all about you just like white knuckling it and like just doing things that are like really difficult. So I think they set the bar too high and then they just it just doesn't work, right? So much of it is if you set yourself up with the right conditions, it'll come naturally. Because I think that's our natural state. Like if you look at kids and how curious they are, how much they're willing to try things before they have this world of expectations on them, it comes naturally. And so I found that to be true too, even on the parachute team. I mentioned I didn't really let myself fully enjoy being on the team until I was a senior. Before that, it's like I was trying so hard to belong, making sure that I'm doing the right things. I don't want to mess up, but I had all the right conditions in place by the time I was a senior that I found myself relaxing, having fun, trying things that I wouldn't have tried before. And it just happened. It happened naturally because I had the right conditions in place.
Was there any point where you were like, I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to move into it, something else?
Yeah, actually, my junior year, I started. So our main job on the team is to teach other people how to skydive.
Okay.
But there's two other, like our secondary duties. So there's the demonstration team and the competition team. So the demonstration team, they jump into like the Rose Bowl. They jump into all our football games. Well, I guess all of us did, including the competition team. But they take the brunt of the air shows. And then the competition team, they do formation skydive. And so I was on the demonstration team and I remember sitting there with a group of guys that I felt like we were really good friends. And so this guy asked me out of nowhere, he goes, "You don't really want to jump into the Rose Bowl, do you?" And I took that as, well, now I don't. Like, it feels like you don't want me there. And I don't think he was trying to like exclude me. Like, we are actually like very good friends. I think he was trying to figure out what his competition was. But I felt like, gosh, I don't feel like I belong. Like, here's these demonstration guys like jumping together on Sunday in their spare time, and I'm not going with them. They all are planning their who's going to go to the Rose Bowl. And I just was like, what's the point? And then I had somebody ask me to join the competition team, and we started training together, and I have never felt so much like I belonged as I did with them. And I realized I just didn't have the right people in place. That was like my missing key there. And then I absolutely loved being on the team. Like my whole outlook changed just for that, because of that one thing. And so those four guys were still, or there's four of us total. So there's three other guys. We're still super close today. They came out for my 40th birthday and we like went in the wind tunnel together just for fun. And it was the best. I couldn't have asked for a better end to my time on the team. But yes, there was a point where I was like, it just feels lonely.
Yeah. I like how you're like, find your people, find your group. I'm curious though, in terms of, because we talk about jumping out of planes and things, that like, is there like a difference? I don't know if like, I guess like, or separates maybe, like is a better word, for like the people that go versus the people that don't go, or like hesitate, or like, I guess it would be like those that jump and then those that hesitate. Like, is there a difference? Like, can you point those out? Like,
I had never had anybody not jump, surprisingly. Cause like I said, there's a lot of people that go through. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think some of it is this sort of muscle memory that we really instill in them. And that's what happened to me. I couldn't not go.
Yeah.
It's also a super supportive environment, right? Like we train them hard. We work hard. We have high standards to make sure that they're safe. Right. But I don't think anybody felt like not supported in this. If you fail a jump, you retrain unless you're like really not safe. So yeah, I don't think I've had anybody refuse, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten like those. Do you ever have to push someone out? You're like,
no, but I did have a guy. So I do have to like push them out to like force them more into the wind stream. Yeah. But I did have a guy who thought that when I was pushing, I warned them beforehand, and we do it on the ground too. We practice what it feels like for the Jumpmaster to get you more into position, because the more you have in the wind stream, the more likely you're going to exit stable. And so I had one guy, I held him out and I pushed him out, or like pushed his hips out. I was still holding him and he just went. Like I didn't tell him to go. He just went. And I'm like trying to hold on to him, but I can't. Like, I mean, my hand cannot hold him anymore. So I let go and I was like, okay, bye. I was so scared that he was going to come down and be like, you dropped me. And I remember looking at the rest of the plane being like, my gosh, they're going to think that I dropped him. They're not going to trust me anymore. But they had no clue. And this guy was like, oh, I thought you were telling me to go. So that's the closest I got to like pushing somebody out. He thought I was like forcing him out the door. So he just let go.
Have you ever had a jump gone wrong?
Yes. I remember. So not with my students. I haven't had any issues with my students, but when I was learning how to formation skydive, I exited the airplane and this guy flipped while he was exiting and he kicked me in the head so hard it shattered my face shield and like my head went back. And I remember the next thing I remember is like somebody gripping my arm, like a death grip on my arm. And I looked at him and this guy, he was a sergeant in the Air Force and he was just like, "You okay? Are you?" And his eyes were huge and he's just gripping me. And finally I said, "I'm good." I go down, I pull my parachute, come down, and he goes, "You passed out. I thought I was going to have to pull your parachute for you and just let you land somewhere." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So that is by far the closest thing I got. I mean, it was terrifying.
Wow.
But I ended up with like a bruise, like a hand mark on my like on my arm. So yeah, that was the closest I came to a big,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow. Did that get you did that get you nervous for the next jump on the fact that you like passed out, or was like you didn't even realize?
A little bit. I think more so. This is going to sound weird because it is a scary thing that happened, right?
Right.
But I felt very taken care of.
Okay.
Like the fact that this guy was like, "I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to pull your parachute." And it made me feel like I can do scary things because these people have my back.
We're going to stop right here as we're going to give a shout out to one of our other sponsors, Sphere Emoji. Quick question for you. When was the last time you gave someone a gift that actually meant something? Not another candle or another box of chocolates, a gift where every time they see it, they think of you. That's Sphere Emoji. Plushies with personality. It's saying, "I got this for you because you're loved," or "I got this for you because you make me laugh. You're my giggles. You're my Lulu." They are soft, they're comforting, and a daily reminder that that person matters. With Valentine's Day coming up, Lulu is the perfect gift, mini or pillow size. And yes, the pillow size is as comfortable as it sounds. It's my favorite. So go on over in the show notes and find a sphere emoji that matches your vibe, or just go to sphereemoji.com. Now back to our show.
What do you learn from working around special operations that most civilians don't understand?
Most people from the outside looking in think of it as just like, oh, they're like the ones they're just tougher. They just have this like stronger like mental capacity or whatever it is, right? But at the end of the day, it's like they were humans set up with the right conditions to be able to step into these roles. So it feels extreme. It looks extreme. But at the end of the day, it's like that stuff still applies. Like kind of what we said earlier, it applies to the everyday moments that we just kind of brush aside and think, oh, it's nothing. And so when it comes down to it, they are very like you have to be vulnerable because you can't not hit a breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like we know each other on these levels. And so there's a lot more vulnerability than I think people realize because it's masked in this like really hard shell from the outside looking in. And so there's so much strength in that. And I think people on the outside of these worlds, if they could create that same kind of vulnerability, it doesn't have to be like jumping out of airplanes. You just have to be intentional. That's how you create that high performing team. Because even in the military, at the end of the day, yeah, it is about the mission, but you're really doing it for the person to your left and the person to your right. So if you can create that same sort of bond, you can go after, I worked in manufacturing. We were making like closures for wine bottles or printing labels for wine bottles. You can still have that no matter what you're applying that, whatever the mission is, if you have the right environment.
You mentioned earlier in the show that you teach this, and you also mentioned the class that like within like one day, like by the next day, they feel more of a team, right? What are some things that you do that cultivates that?
So if I take you into like the iFly world, because that might be a little bit easier to get this, is everyone sucks at indoor skydiving the first time they do it. I mean, unless you just happen to have an experienced skydiver on your team, which is very unlikely, right? Everyone sucks at it. So it breaks down barriers so fast. So we also mimic something similar in like a classroom setting, is like getting people out of their heads, playing certain games that forces them out of their heads and into the moment, breaks down barriers so much faster than just talking about or lecturing it. So we try to get people into action quickly. And even though, we talk about doing hard things together, but there's also, I'll never forget, somebody said this after the first workshop I did. They were like, I didn't realize how vulnerable joy can be and how much I have never seen my colleagues like truly light up. So it doesn't always have to be so heavy.
But
there's ways to break it down. So it's like we try to enter in a way that feels lighter. And then we get into the deeper stuff.
I like that. I like that a lot. I didn't know that indoor skydiving, you suck at it when you first.
Well, my husband, he flew, he was a pilot. And so I remember for my wedding, my bridesmaid's gift was putting people in the wind tunnel. My husband's like, I fly. I know I was an instructor pilot. Like, I understand aviation. I'm going to be awesome. Oh my gosh. He was flying all over the place because you don't have the muscle memory for it. It's like learning to walk for the first time. So there's something about that is really disarming and helps you remember how to have a beginner's mind and how to approach things without your guard up so high.
I like the have a beginner's mind because I feel like the more you age, the less you want to even accept beginner, right?
Yes.
It's, and the thing is like each thing that you do, beginner, like you gotta start somewhere, right? But we don't think that the older we get is like, we don't think that many times, like as teenagers, right? Like we're the best at everything, right? But I think also the older we get too, at some point, like we forget about the basics.
Yes.
Right. So that's a really good. Now I'm curious in terms of how long did you serve?
I was in for 9 years.
Okay. So did you know, like, cause you mentioned corporate America, high achievers, like, all the stuff that you're going to, and now today you're teaching and speaking and all that stuff. Like, what did you have a plan for yourself? How is your transition period into then civilian life?
It was a mixed bag, to be honest. I thought I was going to stay in for 20 years, go work for the CIA, the FBI. Like, I really thought it was going to be a career for me. Transitioning out, I had a relatively soft landing because my boss was in the Army. Actually, he was still serving in the Army in the reserves at the time, or the Guard at the time. He went to West Point, so he has a similar background as he pulled me onto this really small team doing a huge business system overhaul. So there was 6 of us, we were all hand selected. So it felt like, man, this feels good. Like we're still on a high performing team. We're still moving forward. And it wasn't until I moved into the business that I really started to feel it, where I'm like, oh gosh, everybody has different motivations. Not everybody is just triple type A personality. How do I motivate them? Like why would they care about if the data is clean or not? And so that was the first time that I felt like, man, I really have to get intentional about how I create this environment for them.
And how did you do that? I guess curious too, in terms of what you just said, I'm going to equate it to myself. So that way you can understand in terms of what I'm trying to say. So I run a nonprofit and I have a for-profit as well. And one of the things that we're talking about right now with the nonprofit, I actually just had this meeting before, is some programs that we're going to be putting into place. And one of the workshops that we're going to be doing is where kids write their own books. Actually, it's right here, as you can see it. So they're going to be creating their own hardcover books and becoming authors. And I was like, okay, we can pitch this to schools and we could go in because we do assemblies. And that program took me about 50, before it got to perfect or whatever is the closest it's going to get to perfect, where it's locked and loaded, it's not changing, right? Took me 50 tries. But now we have this new one we're talking about, and it's the workshop to get students to write their own book. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do 20 kids, 30 kids, 50 kids. What's the number that I could do? How long is this going to take? And a lot of it is trial and error. We kind of have a plan in place. Obviously, you have to have the plan in place. But until we test it out, will I know what we're capable of, right? And this summer, we're doing summer camp with 50 kids. And 50 kids are going to be coming out with a book, and they're only working on it for 1 hour for 5 days. And I'm like, let's just pray to God that we're going to succeed at this, right? But I also have a team versus just myself. Whereas when I'm going to school, it's just myself. For you, coming out, creating workshops and plans and all this other stuff, how, in a way, I guess, would you say, I'm trying to figure out exactly how to word this. Maybe you could understand what I'm saying is for me, I get a little worried in terms of okay, because someone's paying for this. Someone's paying for me to go in and do this workshop. And I get worried it has to come together. And it comes together. But how smooth is it going to come together is really the question. What are these kids going to learn? What is coming out of this, right? So for you, like, how does it work for you in terms of putting all this together, seeing it through, the learning, the failures, the, getting it to smooth and things like that?
Yeah. I think what we talked about before is when you shift the spotlight from you to them, changes everything.
Yes.
So even in this, there's so many times I'm like, I want to get the exact perfect thing down. But when I shift it and I say, what did you get out of this? I'm often shocked at the answers because so many times you might want this like perfect thing, right? But they have never experienced having an hour a day to be able to write, to be able to be creative, to have this space. So you're creating this container regardless of how good it is internally. So them giving that feedback and saying, putting that question on them and saying like, well, what did you get out of this? What is the one thing you learned? It always blows my mind what comes to fruition, right? Like even the first time I ever did this workshop, right? I've made iterations ever since, but I don't know if that'll ever end, right? So I try to think about like I'm so close to it that I forget that other people just having a sliver of it, just having a taste of it will transform them.
And how did it feel for you going into now this role, this position, this, like that's totally different from what you were doing?
Yeah, it is totally different. But if I think through that through line, it was always about the people, right? The thing that I remember was always watching someone transform, whether it was like when the guys that I told you about that were terrified when I put them on. And then by the time I like had the first couple jump out, it was so much fun, like watching them. Right. And I still remember the very first guy. I didn't tell him he was the first person I ever held out of an airplane until years later. I ran into him at an Air Force base and finally told him the truth because I didn't want him to like be scared or like not trust me. And so they are quiet on that airplane and it's my job to help them feel a little bit more comfortable, to create more space for them. But then I land and like they are just high-fiving, talking a mile a minute. It is just insane to watch them like just really lean into it, right? And so I see that same transformation, whether I was an intelligence officer or if I was a manager in corporate. Helping people take it to the next level is what was fun for me. So I feel like that through line hasn't changed.
Gotcha. I like that. I like that a lot. Yes. I find that within my own life as well. It's like the through line, no matter and the weirdest things that I've done, the through line remains the same. Yeah.
Yes.
It's really cool. Now I have to ask you, because I mentioned it in the bio and I know that because we're getting towards the end of the show and I need to answer this question. I said in the bio, using indoor skydiving to help leaders perform under pressure, right? Now, you mentioned that it does break you down because everyone sucks at it, so it disarms you, right? But how does indoor skydiving help leaders perform under pressure?
So if I think about the wind tunnel quite literally, it is going so fast. You cannot control the wind, just like you cannot control the chaos or the tornado that you're in. But you can learn how to be the calm in the storm, because the minute you're in the wind tunnel, if every small movement you make, it could result in these big changes. So like my husband, who thought he was really good at this, he got so stiff that he ends up waffling like a leaf. He's hitting the sides, but being that stiff and trying so hard to control everything does not help you.
Okay.
It makes things worse, right? But then if you're also and then you feel too loose, right? If you're too loose, you're going to flop around too. That doesn't help either. So learning how to go with these conditions really helps you start to see like, okay, what is really in my control and what is not. So we take those lessons and we do very much like very military to do this, go in and we debrief, right? And we talk through like, okay, where is this applying in your life? Where do you need to step into the wind tunnel? Where are you just waiting on the outside? What do you need to let go of? What can you control? Where do you prepare? Where do you not prepare? And so we take these and apply them to their very real, like stand in the door moments. And at the end of the day, the goal here is to create more space, right? Like, how do you regulate yourself when everything around you is moving so fast? And so I don't think I stated this super clearly, but like the biggest leadership, if I had to boil it down to one thing, the biggest leadership lesson I learned from being on the skydiving team is that the greatest gift you can give your team and yourself is a regulated nervous system.
How does one regulate?
You have your in the moment practices, right? Like whether it's the breathing thing or you're zooming into like a very specific detail, you're figuring out what is your go-to to regulate in the moment when something unexpected arises. But then I think your bigger thing is what is your actual practice? What are you deliberately practicing? So the example I love to give doesn't work as much anymore now that my 7-year-old can get out of the car by himself. But being a mom, like you're constantly dysregulated. Like it's just nonstop all the time. And so I remember being like, okay, well, I have to find these moments, like these little pockets. So what is the trigger I'm going to use to practice regulating myself? Mm-hmm. And so every time I would get out of the car, walk around to unbuckle them out of their seatbelts, it's like, okay, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. So now I'm practicing it like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times a day. And so finding your own practice that helps you regulate just as a baseline, like raising your baseline is going to help you tap into those practices when the stakes are higher.
That makes sense.
Which is kind of what skydiving did to me, right? Because skydiving in a weird, even though that's very extreme, it was the thing that made me not so shy anymore. It made me stop saying no to opportunities I really wanted to say yes to. It opened up my field of possibilities because I had to learn how to regulate myself in that environment.
How long did it take you to learn how to regulate yourself?
Man, it probably took me at least the 2 years. By the time I became a senior, I felt really like proficient at it. Like not that I didn't get the nerves, but I was okay moving through them.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand that. I used to do acting, and I worked for Penny Marshall for 5 years. And the first, I guess, like couple of months I worked for her, she was like, you belong in front of the camera. And I was like, no. And she was like, I was super shy, introvert, like, no. And she's like, no, you belong in front of the camera. Go take an acting class. And I went to a party that night and I met this guy there. And I said, you asked, what do you do? Right. And he's like, I'm an acting coach. And I'm like, when do you have class? And he's like, Mondays. I go, I guess I'll see you Monday. And I show up to the class, and I remember like sitting outside the door. You wait for him. We're like, there's 6 of us waiting for him to show up. And I'm just staring at my car going, will anyone know if I just bolt? Like, would anyone realize? And then I'm like, he shows up and I'm like, now I'm here. And then he walks through and we sit down and my knee is shaking and I'm shaking. And then I'm last because I'm new. So he's like, he wanted to spend a little bit more time with me. So I get up there and I mean, everything is shaking. And then all of a sudden it's your time to go and you do it. And then you finish and it's like, okay. And like you said, with the high-fiving, everyone's high-fiving, right? And I was like, okay, I didn't die, right? I got through it, right? And whether it was good or not, like I got through it, right? And then I was like, I'm going to stay in this class until I don't feel that way anymore. Like until I don't feel like I want to throw up before coming here, I am going to stay in it. And it took 6 months for me to get to that point. But I think that's like the thing of just giving yourself that grace and that feeling and that knowing like, okay, I get it. Like I'm going to feel like I want to throw up, but you know what? What can I do to, regulate? What can I do to, to get over that? I can understand that very well. And I like the fact that you said it took 2.5 years. And at that time you still had nerves, but you just felt a little bit more comfortable. It's the same thing with me. It's like, every audition, you still got a little nervous. There's pressure on the line, right? For you, there's lives on the line for what you guys do in the military. Like for me, it was just, am I going to eat today or, not? That was the pressure of getting the job or not. But, that's just understanding that, realizing that and being like, we've been here before.
You raise a really good point where it's like you're proving to yourself that you're safe, even when you have nerves.
Yes. 100%. I love that. Thank you for taking what I said in 10 minutes and write it down to a sentence.
No, we need the stories. Otherwise it doesn't stick.
So what do you have for us listeners that we could do on a daily basis to strengthen our mental fitness to be able to tackle those everyday challenges that inevitably come our way?
Yeah. If there's one thing to remember is to treat discomfort as data, right? Instead of letting it run your life, take that data and do something with it. Notice when you're uncomfortable, move through it. What did that feel like? Did it work? Did it not? And then incorporate that into your practice.
I love that. 109 episodes. No one's ever said that one. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Tanya, you are awesome. I really enjoyed talking with you so much. I think our listeners really got a lot from it. Do you do individual coaching? Do you do team? How does it work? We're going to put you down in the show notes, all your information, but why don't you just share what you do for those that are listening in case anyone wants to get in touch with you?
Yes, I do work with leaders and leaders individually as well as teams. It doesn't have to be in the wind tunnel, but it can be. So if anyone's interested, I would love to hear from you. You said the email will be in the show notes, but just shoot me an email that says I'm ready to jump.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. You were a pleasure. And everyone that's listening, like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Substack member. Join our book club. It's completely free. It's from the guests of the show that wrote books. We're going to dive into them all and strengthen our mindset together. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you all next week.